Welcome to the seminar, Moving from Opportunity to Operation. It's a part of the Art of Making Business Happen, presented by Conceptual Lee. My name is Lori Elliott, and I'm your facilitator for this seminar. The Moving from Opportunity to Operation workshop series consists of 5 sessions. The first one today is an overview. It's followed by unique competitive space profiling, then opportunity identification and prioritization, business model development, and immediate startup plan development. These last 4 sessions are 4-hour workshops. The seminar topics covered here today include overviews of unique competitive space, business opportunity identification and prioritization, and finally, positive cash flow business model and implementation. Let's start out by taking a look at unique competitive space. What is it? It is the space for which you are uniquely designed to create value, which inherently gives you competitive advantage over others. This is not a bad thing, this is a great thing. That means that you become a leader, expert, and that you dominate your own competitive space. But it also recognizes that everyone has a unique competitive space in which they lead and dominate over others. But it also changes the nature of competition. Competition is no longer about getting over on someone or beating someone, not that it doesn't happen, but it's more about how can we work together to collaborate in order that everybody wins. The nature of competition goes from what we understand it or have understood it to be, to more of what we call co-opetition, or if you wanted to draw it out, collaborative competition. Now, along with the concept of unique competitive space, there are certain paradigms that you have to operate in to get the full advantage of this unique competitive space. The first is you need to operate in the paradigm of abundance versus scarcity. Scarcity tells us that there is not enough, but abundance says it's unlimited. The origin of the scarcity mentality in business started many centuries ago. But for the modern age, we understand that the roots of it came with an economist called Adam Smith in what he called The Wealth of Nations. And in that he described only 3 or 4 what they call factors of production. That means there were only 3 or 4 factors that would allow for increased economic growth or prosperity or in building wealth. And he said that those things were labor, land, and capital. Now, as we understand it today, we see a lot of limitations when we think of resources, when we think of labor to do things, when we think of capital, we have a view that says there is only so much. And the problem with that view, which has happened throughout the centuries, is that that means that people believe that they have to control something, control more of something in order to win, which is not necessarily the case. The one element that's missing in that picture is what we call knowledge. Adam Smith recognized that knowledge was important in the process of economic growth, but he didn't consider it a factor. And because of that, what we have learned in today's world is that our idea of competition comes from a scarcity mentality. That means, one, that people operate in the spirit of control versus authority. Someone has to control something in order to win. Authority says I have a legitimate right to it. So for example, in your unique competitive space, you have authority over that area. You are the leader, you are the king, you are the ruler, and no one can compete with you on that. However, you cannot control another person's space because they have authority over that. It also impacted, this view of scarcity also impacted the concept of freedom. When you have control, you cannot have freedom. Control ended up being in our business landscape, not only controlling resources or capital, but also controlling people. And if you are thinking of unique competitive space, you can only dominate and control what's given to you. For example, your house, your car, things that you've worked for. You would not expect that someone else would control those things. Freedom, however, says that in your unique competitive space, you are free to dominate. But freedom never means that you have freedom over other people or that you can control other people, because every person has their unique space in which to compete. Freedom actually comes from the concept of free to dominate. It's shortened. But it's not domination, again, over others. It's domination of your unique competitive space. The problem that we have even today, even if we have the right paradigm, we're thinking abundance versus scarcity, we understand the concept of unique competitive space. We still have problems with boundaries, and that's a learning process. As an individual, I know that I'm strong in certain things. I love to research, I write and I speak. Yet, that doesn't necessarily give me clear boundaries to understand where my seat of competitiveness rests precisely. So, in the nature of things, in the nature of business, because we are always trying to figure out our boundaries and working the appropriate boundaries, we will bump into others and sometimes overstep our bounds into their competitive space, or they may do the same to us. But that is the process of living the life or the journey of owning a business or being an entrepreneur. When you learn what your boundaries are, you hit your sweet spot. And you know that that sweet spot will carry you a long way to build prosperity and wealth for yourself and for your society. Now, outside of the concept of freedom, we also have the concept of invisible to visible. When we think of scarcity, we often get that view because there's only so much that we can see. And I'll give you a perfect example. We've been hearing for years that we're running out of oil because there was only so much oil that the world could see. And I'm not advocating, wasting precious natural resources. But even in the last 6 months, through new technology, they have found new deposits in the United States, off the coast of Africa. I think in 3 or 4 countries. They found oil in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, in Uganda, and these are not the normal oil producing countries. These are new countries that have reserves of oil. So the concept is that with invisible to invisible, just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And when you think of a business idea, it's much the same way. The idea's in your head. It's not something tangible that people see. It's coming from the inside out. Another good example, I think of Albert Einstein. When he talked about the invisible world, dealing with the atom, people thought he was crazy. The things that he saw in his head, we could not see in the tangible realm. Yet, when they developed microscopes that were powerful enough to see that level of microscopic entity, his theory was no longer just a theory or an idea. It was visible, it was tangible, and it was proof of what he had in his head. The same goes for your business idea. Your business idea is not based on what you see, it's based on what comes out of you. The idea that comes to your head, the intuition that comes in your spirit. And as you develop that and work that, it goes from invisible to visible. Now this leads us back to an important concept about knowledge. The reason knowledge allows us to have abundance and unlimited potential of economic growth or prosperity or wealth building is because knowledge are ideas, things that we as human beings do. Each of us has the ability to think of ideas all day long. In our lifetime, we think of thousands of ideas to solve problems. Every day, all the time. It goes the same with business ideas. So as these ideas turn into new knowledge, which we can also call technology or innovation, They then create additional ways to build wealth and to serve society, to serve consumers. So because knowledge is ever growing, and as humans we have the ability to continue to develop ideas, that means that there is no limit to the amount of wealth and prosperity that we can bring to ourselves and bring to others. Now, the impact of abundance, or the abundance paradigm on the business environment, means that we change our mentality. We don't waste our time focusing on only what we have. We focus on doing something with what we have to make something more. That is what we mean by taking value and increasing that value to serve consumers in the case of business. And as I've mentioned before, this also changes the landscape of competition. Not that we don't compete directly with others, but we've added another element where in order to compete, to reach our maximum, the unlimited potential of our unique competitive space, we actually collaborate with others. Now, when we think of technology, when we think of IBM, when we think of Apple, there's actually what we call a full ecosystem of people who are involved in making money around Apple or IBM products. And these are organizations that might have been, in the past, competitors. That is how the concept of abundance versus scarcity changes the landscape of competition, and also how the unique competitive space paradigm plays in this day and moving forward. Now, what most people don't realize is that if you don't operate this way, you will not be successful. The global understanding of how to compete is actually changing. Now, what does that mean when we talk about now being an entrepreneur in this environment? An entrepreneur is a person who creates things based on his or her uniqueness. Again, that's your unique competitive space. We are all creators. We are all entrepreneurs. Every single person can take what is uniquely their thought or idea and make it into a business that develops wealth. In business, entrepreneurs create value to create wealth while serving others. So when we talk about serving others, first of all, you serve your customers. Secondly, you serve the people who support you in creating that wealth in serving your customers. That could be your staff. It could be suppliers who provide you products. It could be your community, the input that you give back to them. But the concept is that as you are creating that wealth, creating that value, you are serving others to accomplish it. The process of creating this value involves all of you, your spirit, your mind, and your body. The business idea, it may come to your head, but the full understanding of what it is actually resides in your spirit. And let me tell you that every good thing, every good business idea, everything with potential starts with your spirit. It doesn't start with the outside. Things that you learn and experience in the world, in the tangible realm, do play a part in developing that full idea. But the idea of doing business, the ability to succeed, comes from within your spirit, takes hold of your mind, and then causes you in the physical realm to move on that idea. Also, when you're an entrepreneur, you're living the life of an entrepreneur. It's not something where you go to work, you put on a hat and then you take it off at the end of the day. Being an entrepreneur is a lifelong journey. It's a path that you follow. Sometimes it may be a path that goes from A to B to C to D. Sometimes it may be a path that goes from A to E to M to P back to A. But essentially, it's a journey. And it's very important that we understand that our unique competitive space is more about serving others than ourselves. When we have that understanding and we create that culture in our business, that causes us to multiply because we are helping others to build a better life, build wealth, build prosperity for themselves. Now let's take a look at what I mean by value. There's actually a process of taking an idea and making it tangible, and in that process creating its value. When your idea becomes valuable enough to your consumers, they will pay you for it, whether it's a service, whether it's a product. For example, if someone needs help with their plumbing, when they really need it, they will look for a plumber, and hopefully you will have connected with them and served them well, so that not only do you have them as a customer, but they refer other people to you. So first, dreams and ideas are seeds planted in your spirit. And this is a good analogy, how a tree grows. Seeds grow into plants, let's say an apple tree. Plants produce fruit, which is value, with new seed. So for example, every time you do a service to someone, you're planting a new seed in their minds about the fact that they are going to use you another time, or that they are going to recommend you to others. So you're planting new seeds that will ultimately multiply. Now those new seeds, those new referrals, produce more plants, which produce more fruit, which means that when we talk about fruit, that means that at that point you are creating wealth for yourself and for the other people. And it also produces seeds. Now because you have multiple plants that are producing more fruit and more seeds, you are now multiplying. So for example, from your first customer, you served them well, they paid you. That was your first fruit, your first set of apples. Now, because you've served them well, they refer other people to you, and you can also use them as a reference. So now, from that one positive exchange of value, or that one business transaction, that one service you provided for them, you might actually now have 5 new customers. Think about doing the same thing with those 5 customers who recommend you to another 2 or 3 people. Now you have 10 or 15 customers. And that is the concept of multiplication. In general, as you continue this process, this multiplication will evolve until it overflows, bringing you profit. So that means that you will have enough customers that will allow you to pay the expenses of the business, but have much left over that you can use to improve your quality of life and that of others as well. So essentially what we're saying is that in the end, you have a positive balance sheet with plenty of money flowing, where you have more money coming in than going out in expenses. Now, when we talk about value creation, one of the things that people don't understand is that this is not a process that you do one day and then it stops. It again is living that life of an entrepreneur. In order to succeed, to take that idea of doing business to implementing, when you're starting a new business, when you're starting a new product line, or starting a new service, or going to a new territory, you have to power push for progress. And there are several tips or several practices that I advocate. The first is always think about serving and seeding to others. Serving is serving your customers, doing it with excellence, doing it with quality. Seeding might be helping others to serve their clients. For example, when there are 2 small companies, maybe you have equipment that can be used by one of your friends who's also an entrepreneur. Instead of your friend having to go out to buy this equipment, which he only needs to use occasionally, you allow him to borrow it when he has customers that require that service, that requires that equipment. That's an example of seeding into others. That also increases your value, because as you continue to do that and live that out, you create an ecosystem that supports your business, so that they send referrals your way. So it's not only your customers, but it's also other businesses that can be a part of your ecosystem to create a system that generates wealth for you and wealth for them also. The next thing is identify principles and values. When we talk about principles and values, these are things that never change. For example, if you say that one of your values is placing the customer first, that means in every situation you do that. When we talk about principles and values, this is a matter of character. Character is very important. These are things that no matter what the circumstances are, whether good or bad, profitable, a time of lack, that you keep them. And in this new age of business, this evolving age of business, it's not just about competition and getting for myself. It's again about serving and ceding to others. Now, a set of principles and values that I think really will help you do that is found in The Compassionate Samurai. It's a book by Brian Clemmer. Several of those values include commitment, excellence, serving others, being responsible, helping others, and there are about 10 of them. So I suggest that you read the book, and it really gives a good set of values that you personally can employ, and also those that you can employ in your organization with your internal team. Another way to power push is to live and operate in the abundant entrepreneurial worldview, which means that you recognize that the potential for you as an entrepreneur to develop a business that's successful, that's profitable, that leads to prosperity, is all around you. But you also have to live the life of an entrepreneur, that being one that never stops, that keeps going, that perseveres, that endures, that always finds solutions to problems, that is creative. Also, focus on creating value first, not making money. The key for you is not in the money, the exchange of the money, but it's in creating something for which people will want to exchange money or other things. That is how you're going to get your wealth. That is how you're going to build your profit and build your prosperity. Also, be a warrior. Be bold, strategic, flexible, and relentless. Even though we may not always say this, being in business, being an entrepreneur, it's, even if you're not in war, it's being ready for war, being ready to push, being ready to do anything that it takes that's legal and positive to be in business. Also, operate out of your strength. One of the things that you'll learn in the Unique Competitive Space Profiling workshop is that both personally and organizationally, you need to look at things that are your strengths. Now, it's not that you don't address your weaknesses, but you spend more time focusing on your strengths because they will carry you further than if you spend time focusing on what you don't have, what there's not enough of, whether it's skills, money, resources, whatever. Next is always seek knowledge and learn. Use it. Now, that can be researching on the internet, it can be going to the library, it can be going to classes, it can be learning from your experience as you interact with your customers. It can be also observing your environment, observing where there are gaps in serving consumers. That gives you an idea for a new product. It could be in studying how another business does something and applying it to your business. So it's not always about book learning, but it's about experiencing, gaining that knowledge, whether book, by observation, by doing things, learning from mistakes. And the one point I want to make is that if you fail at something, that doesn't mean that you failed as an entrepreneur. You will fail at certain things, but you will succeed at life and succeed at doing business. Also, collaborate with others. We talked about cooperation earlier. Always think about acting with urgency. It's not that you act with urgency every single time, but you have to have that go for it spirit instead of that laid back, I'll do it another time spirit. And that's something that we have to fight within ourselves, because it could be people around us, it could be the environment, it could be the circumstances that tell us, well, you know what, I'm going to lay low. But the thing is when you have that sense of urgency, you push for things, you keep moving, you keep prodding, you keep pushing. If you don't do that, you'll never get through. But there are times you need to know when to sit back and reflect. Sometimes you've made mistakes that's taking you down the wrong path. It's not wrong to sit back and think, what did I do wrong? How can I change it? How can I make it better? Another principle is use what you have. Don't always think about what you don't have. If you've got a car, if you've got a cell phone, if you've got a computer, if you've got access to the internet, you can do a whole lot in business at that level. Even if you're not serving customers at that point, those basic tools will allow you to research your business and do things to prepare to serve your customer well. The other thing, work on a shoestring budget. Don't think that you have to pay for everything. When you're starting out a business and emerging, there are a lot of things that you don't know and cannot anticipate automatically. You will learn those things as you go through the process. When you think about spending money, for example, signing up for a subscription for something where you're locked into it for 2 years, you have to think, is this something I need now? Because what happens is if you don't need it now, you are still locked into a 2-year contract, and you are not making the best of that resource that's available to you. You might be able to apply that money to something else that will take you further. Now, we call that concept of working on a shoestring budget bootstrapping, and we'll talk more about that later when we talk about developing a positive cash flow model. Along with the concept of bootstrapping is stay out of debt. And that doesn't mean that you never go in debt, that you never take out loans or ask for help and assistance. But the thing that I've found is in business, and myself included when I first started, my first thought is that I had to have money to start a business. And that's not necessarily wrong, but if that's what we think about, we think more about how to get a loan and the money to start than we do about what the essence of business is. Business is about exchanging value. So the important thing, this last point, is that you need to aim at getting clients to start your business. Paying clients who will pay you for the service, not financial assistance to start the business. That needs to be your mindset. And if you have that mindset, you'll find that you'll spend a lot less money. You will find that you stay much less in debt, and you have the proper paradigm. Now, what happens is when you have this paradigm, if you have customers who pay you for your service or your product, then when you do need to go get a loan, you have records to show that you have revenue. And you also need to keep records on how you spent the money. But the point is that then the banks or the financial institutions can see that you can pay them back. Remember, they have to feel people are only going to give you money when they think it's a bankable project or bankable business, because they want to make money off of you. That is what the concept of loaning does. They are making money off you. You're not making money off of them. So in that instance, I'm not saying there are some business, for example, if you're coming up with an innovative new product that requires a lot of research and development, for example, pharmaceutical companies, they have to spend a lot of money up front to develop a new pill, or a new medical procedure or equipment. So in those cases, you will find that they do find investors or they find grants or loans. But the paradigm I'm trying to give you here is about starting business right away, starting to make money as soon as possible. Get moving, serve clients, make money, create a cycle that's sustainable, that brings in money. Because as you do that, as you concentrate on that first, you will find that it will grow. It's not that you follow every procedure from 1, 2, 3 down to 10, but it's the point of following a process, learning from it, improving, and creating greater value for one customer than for many customers. It's a general process of building wealth in business. Now, let's also take a look at what this business development process is, again, from a practical perspective, in terms of taking that idea of doing business, to implementation. The first thing is that you need to understand your unique competitive space. And so you do a unique competitive space assessment. Then you generate business ideas, and you take that idea that's in your head and put it down on paper by developing the concept. And we'll talk about that because that's where we get into developing a business model. This is where you say, this is how I'm actually going to do this business, which is going to be profitable. And that concept development phase ends up in a concept document that's 2 or 3 pages that clearly expresses what your for-profit business is. Then concept validation simply means that you test it out. You test out that model that you believe that's going to work. And then you go through an evolutionary process where you continue to improve it until it produces and it's sustainable on its own. Now, in that process, it's not that you don't make money. You're not thinking it in your head and then just testing. Throughout this entire process, you are always looking for clients that pay you for your services or your products. And then finally, once you've gone through enough fine-tuning, you will have a feasible business model that is workable, that produces cash flow, that you can build upon. So that's what I talk about implementation. It doesn't mean that you haven't started business before, but you now have a business model that you can replicate. For example, you can bring in other people to work with you, and as you bring in more resources, it multiplies what you're able to do, your capacity. Therefore, it multiplies the opportunity to serve clients. Therefore, it creates the more opportunity for you to create money, or create wealth rather. Now, let's take a look at specifically that first step, which is your unique competitive space assessment. And it first starts out with who you're designed as. What is your DNA? The DNA is the blueprint for you as a person. It's not only about your physical makeup or your personality. It's also about the types of business ideas that will come out of you. And these elements point to a purpose, your own life and your business. Making money is not the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business is to add value somewhere in this world that allows for the exchange of value so that it helps you and others become prosperous. So that's the first thing. You want to understand who you are by understanding your passions, your personalities, and your abilities, because they do point to where your business idea will be and what the purpose of your business will also be. Now, in terms of the unique competitive space assessment, it really is all about identifying your strengths, because your strengths help define the boundaries of your unique competitive space. Now, another piece to understanding your strengths is capital. But capital is more than finance or money. Capital is many things, both intangible and tangible. First of all, you can think of spiritual. The things that come from your spirit, your human spirit, the things that are inside you, that is capital. Those unique business ideas that come to you, those are things that create value that potentially have the ability to create wealth. Intellectual capital, what you know that others don't know, what you understand and perceive that others cannot see. Asset can be something like a house, a car, we talked about like a computer, laptop, a cell phone. Those things are assets that you actually use in order to do your business. Might be physical property, might be buildings. Resource are those things, they're similar to assets, but resources are things that help you to do what you do successfully. That might be equipment, it might be other people who serve as a resource in providing you information, like myself. Social, the networks and connections of the people that you know. You know, one of the things that they found in terms of social networks is that people will often get jobs, for example, or business, not because they advertised, but through their social networks. And also physical, you know, what is your strength? Even having good eyesight for certain businesses, that's very important. Some businesses, if you have weak eyesight, like driving, for example, that might be a problem. So physical is a part of it. So staying healthy, staying fit, doing the things to optimize your body is also important. And then, of course, the financial. We can never say enough. Having that extra cash to help you through the ups and downs of business. Having other assets that you can put into keeping your business going or building the wealth or expanding. All of these pieces are important. Also, or your organization or what capital you hold, but also understanding your environment. And we call this a steeple assessment. It includes understanding the social, cultural aspects of your business environment. For example, certain types of businesses are acceptable, or certain ways of doing business are acceptable in certain environments. You need to be aware of those. Technological innovations. You need to know, for example, if you're providing a service, but someone all of a sudden develops a new process that makes it more cost-effective, you can lose customers because someone has developed new technology, but you are only able to operate in the old mode. So developing yourself, but also understanding what's happening, the changes, the knowledge that's coming into your industry, your sector, your region. Ethical. You always want to run your business ethically. You can make choices. For example, you can do business and decide that if I do bribes, that will help my business, but in the long run, it doesn't. The thing about business is you always want to make ethical decisions. And you need to consider there may be some decisions based on your industry or your understanding of your industry that you need to make that you may not make in general. For example, the issue when you're dealing with medical trials, you are held to a much higher level of ethics because you're dealing with human lives. Also economic. What is the landscape like? For example, part of the reason why people are experiencing a hard time through the economic crisis is because their customers are experiencing an economic crisis. So if, for example, the majority of your customers are in the automotive industry, for example, there are a lot of small suppliers to the automotive industry for car assembly. Now, those, because essentially that was the only sector they served, they are dramatically impacted because their customers, the automotive companies, are not selling cars. Got better for a short while, but the volumes that they were doing before, they're no longer doing. So they're impacted economically because of an environment that they didn't necessarily create. So it's important to keep abreast of those trends. Political. There's a difference. There are different political structures that will support certain industries. So you may find that during one political administration, your sector automatically is the end thing. So business just flows. But in other administrations, it's not that you won't do business, but you might have to do other things in order to get those customers flocking at your door, because in the minds of people in that administration, they are not putting that sector, that industry, as one of their primary support mechanisms, or where they're putting their support into. Of course, you need to be aware of the legal implications of how you're doing business. There are laws that will change. For example, the law that they're trying to look at, where planes cannot sit on the runway with passengers in them for only a certain period of time. So if there's a storm in the future, what they're saying is that the airlines will not be able to make you sit there for 6 hours. They have to make some accommodation after a certain amount of time for you to get off the plane. Now, that may seem like a small thing, but in terms of the airlines, that means that may increase their cost structures, which may mean that they need to put that cost back on you. And then finally, environmental. Even though we as humans are administrators over the natural resources of this earth, we want to create an environment that will continually sustain itself, We don't want to deplete what's been given to us. So that may mean that we may find new technology that addresses the issue, but it's one area that is becoming increasingly important. You hear comments about climate change and how that's impacting like the food supply and all of those things. So environmental is something that you will have to consider and think about. Now finally, when we got all these pieces together, you want to understand your competitive landscape. So you do this with what we call a SWOT analysis. It compares your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And when we look at the SWOT analysis, it's really just a simple matrix. Your strengths and weaknesses are an internal view of what you have or may not have. Your opportunities and threats are your external view. What business opportunities do you have, and what threats impact your business? Could be competitors, could be the changing legal or political structure. Your goal is to match your strengths to opportunities for success while finding ways to overcome or transform weaknesses into strengths and threats into opportunities. You also want to generate a SWOT analysis for key competitors, then compare. When you do that, you'll begin to get a picture of what your unique competitive space is, where you can succeed with no limits. Now, that covers what we call the unique competitive space. Once you have a better understanding of where you might fit in the picture, you then want to look at what opportunities match your competitive space. Remember, we talked about the SWOT analysis. It's looking at your strengths, which is your unique competitive space. But now we want to look at opportunities. Now, in reality, oftentimes you might be presented with an opportunity first before you have a good understanding of your unique competitive space. You'll actually find yourself going back and forth between these processes or these steps quite frequently until you find something where those strengths and those opportunities match. Now let's think about, what is an opportunity? A nice simple definition is a possibility due to a favorable combination of circumstances. And those favorable combination of circumstances include the strengths that you hold. Now, I just want to give you a few insights into this thing about opportunities and how we as entrepreneurs need to respond to them. The first one, we are all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. So that means that opportunities entrepreneurs, when we see chaos, when we see crisis, when we see challenge, that means there's a gap somewhere. That means there's actually an opportunity to succeed in business. We just need to find the spot that we fit so that we can succeed. So even during the difficult economic times like it is now, there is opportunity everywhere where you can be and create profitable businesses. Next one, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Opportunities are around you. You have to go get them. But it's not a matter of just grabbing them. You have to prepare for them. Being a successful entrepreneur is living that life. So that means that you are always in the process of developing the business, thinking about it, living it, and it doesn't mean that you don't have another life, but it means that your spirit understands that process and you continually work to prepare yourself for that opportunity that's there that you may not see. But when you see it and when you're prepared, you can act upon it. Another one, don't wait for extraordinary opportunities. Seize common occasions and make them great. Weak men wait for opportunities. Strong men make them. So that means that there's opportunity every day all around you to do something that's going to be a successful business, that's going to bring you cash flow so that you can live a sustainable, successful, and significant life. Last one, opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. In reality, there are times when you come up with an idea and it may not take you much effort, and all of a sudden you have an instant success in the market. But that is not the normal entrepreneurial process. The normal entrepreneurial process is keep going until it works. Adjust, be flexible, learn new things, change things, transform things, but you keep going. And the person that this quote is comes from, Thomas Edison, he was the inventor of electricity, or let's say in the ability to put electricity to generate light or to generate power. Now, in order to get to the level where he could commercialize electricity, he did over 1,000 experiments that failed in some way, that did not help him get to that point where he could make a commercial venture of electricity. He kept going, he kept learning, he kept innovating until it worked. He had people going around the world to find new knowledge, new techniques that he could bring into his laboratory. He lived innovation. And that's the spirit that we need when we want to be successful, be profitable, build wealth, build prosperity. Now, also, there are opportunities all around you, but in reality, you need to know that it is an opportunity that you want to take. So I do a simple matrix. I call it opportunity, risk, and reward. There are risks with every opportunity, but there's also a reward. Now, when we look at this diagram, we want to achieve high reward, but low risk. But the reality is that in most cases, the highest reward comes with the highest risk. Now, when we talk about the type of business to get you going, in the long term, you can look at the big ideal or the big opportunity, but the key is to see if you can scale that down so that you can have a good reward with manageable or low risk. Because the idea is that even though your long-term vision, your long-term opportunity is going to involve a lot of risk and whatever else, you want to develop a model that you can implement as soon as possible that will give you some level of sustainability. It doesn't mean that you're not still pushing for that, but you're trying to find something workable to get yourself off the ground. And see, once you're off the ground, you then have more capital. People believe that you can do it, so you have more social, intellectual capital. Your spirit is even strengthened because you've achieved. And as you're achieving in those small parts, people will trust you, even financial institutions. They will trust you with money so that you can expand and grow. So yes, we all as entrepreneurs are looking for those big opportunities that most often come with a lot of risk. But in order to get us started so that we are not stopped in the process, we want to look at ways that we can keep moving. So in that, again, we look at scoping those pieces, those steps in the process for that big risk or that big opportunity in manageable chunks. So we look for something and stages in the process that will give us a good reward, meaning that we see a profit in it. We see that it will establish us so that we can then move to the next level. That might be an example of a reward. We find that there's manageable or low risk. We find that even though we are doing some risk and we're putting our effort in, we find that if whatever we're risking, we feel comfortable in risking it. Now, there will be times when you say, I just need to go for the big one, and that's fine. And you need to have that attitude, and that altitude as well, and that outlook, because that gives you energy, that revs you up. But there's also nothing about having those incremental successes that keep you going towards that big vision. Now me, I put all and everything into the vision that I had when I moved to Africa to start business that would prosper everybody, okay? And it was great. But I had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But in that process, I learned that I could even combine the concept of high risk with high reward with working in steps where I had good reward and manageable risk. And now as I took that path, at each stage in the process, I've gained momentum. And now what used to be high risk with high reward is no longer that. It's actually high reward with low risk. So there's a process of taking on opportunities. But there's also an attitude that you have to have. And this again goes back to what's in your mind. That causes you to behave or act in certain ways. You can be a beached whale. You can be a person who sees the ocean of opportunity and stays on shore and suns themselves and never touches the water. You can be a tiptoer, someone who tips their toes in and comes out just to get a feel for what it's like. You can be a waiter, a person who goes in and they go up to a certain level, but and then they may stay in there a long time, okay, and they feel comfortable and whatever else, but they never see that real reward. You can be a grabber, someone who goes out and just, tries to, capture the ocean, capture the waves. Or you can be a catcher, someone who surfs it, someone who sees the ocean of opportunities and learns to navigate and remain on top, or remain on top as long, knows how to ride those waves. That's what we really want to have as an opportunist. We want to be someone who can see an opportunity, but also catch it. Now, this doesn't come instantly. It's a process that we learn as the entrepreneur. That's why I say that being an entrepreneur is a journey. It's more about following a process, learning from it, adjusting your path, but keep going to that goal of having a successful business. Now let's take a look at some ways that you can learn to identify areas of opportunity. There are four main categories that our workshop focuses on. The workshop where we talk about business opportunity identification and prioritization. Those four areas are: take advantage of the market, look at your existing business, enter manufacturing or assembly, or becoming an agent or distributor. We're going to take a look only, or giving you a preview of the take advantage of the market.
First of all, you can take advantage of a market switch. Think about the CD player market to the MP3 player market. If you had understood that there was a market switch, perhaps you could have become a big distributor of MP3 players. This also is an example of capitalizing on a growth trend. With MP3 players, not only can you provide MP3 versions, but you could have maybe gone into an online store that created the opportunity for people to download for pay MP3 songs. Good example is iTunes by Apple. Now, you can also take advantage of new fashions or fads. And we know that every year there's something new that comes out. From this, whatever that fad is, you might be able to tag on to that and do a spin-off. Covering market gaps or shortages. A good example is the African basic services market. Oftentimes, and it's not because there's not money for people to pay for the service, but people experience irregularity in things like power, food supply, even water. Sometimes they can't even get it, they have to try to do it themselves. So if you can come up with a solution that actually fits those needs in that broad market, you might find that it's very profitable for you. You can also imitate a successful product or idea. The one that I always think of is perfume. We have fashion design houses like Versace, Chanel that design these very expensive perfumes. Yet about 6 months to a year later, we have companies that do knockoffs. They believe that the imitations are close to the original, but they've manufactured them or processed them to be affordable to a broader audience. Another thing is to find a good product that has failed. A recent example is for people who actually like to drink. It's called the wine pod. You actually can create your own wine, custom wine, from grape to glass. Now, the original wine pod was about waist or chest high and about 2 people wide. Now, this wasn't really a problem, but the cost of the wine pod was $3,500. Now, that obviously is a lot less from having your own vineyard and winery. I mean, it costs millions of dollars to run them. But what they found is that their market actually dried up. So in a sense, the product failed because they couldn't sustain it. However, they came up with another version that fits on a table. Not only is it smaller, but it's actually more affordable. So their thought was that it's going to appeal to a broader audience. So this is an example of a good product that failed, but it was re-engineered and made better to a market that could actually sustain it.
You can also think about transferring a concept from one industry to another. That means that something that's successful in sports might actually be something that succeeds in education. You can invent a new product or service. You can create a market demand. For example, you know that you have an excellent product, but you know that you need to create space for it. So that actually involves a lot of awareness, a lot of pushing, and getting it out there so people want your product. They don't want other products. You can serve unique client groups. For example, you might be a company that wants to serve only business travelers who travel maybe 75% of the time. They have special needs. You can also take advantage of circumstances. For example, this economic crisis creates wonderful opportunities. Now, business may dry up in one area, but it might actually be better in others. For example, because of this market, what they found is that the people who take cars, old cars, and crush them are actually booming with business. You know, in the United States, they had that Cash for Clunkers program where people could turn in their old cars and get money from the government in order to buy a new car. So now it's actually created this horrible time. It's actually created a lot of cash flow for parts of the market. And believe me, they've taken advantage of it. Also, you can find people with underused skills. You know, typically when I look at things, a lot of times we have people who have skills, but we haven't learned how to take those skills to make more value. I think of, you know, in my field, the things that I've learned in being a trainer and teacher, I can apply those to a lot of different areas. So actually, not only can I create value by training, I can create value in other parts of business as well. Now that you have all of these opportunities and you've listed them all, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to prioritize. Choose those 1 to 3 opportunities that you believe you'll be able to do successfully. And all I'm going to do now is that give you a list of what I would look at in order to understand how I would want to prioritize that. In actuality, people end up having their own priorities, and so you will have to come up with your own list, but these are some suggestions. First of all, you want to be able to provide value to the client. Again, it's not about making money. If you're just thinking about making money, then you shortcut yourself in the long term. You want to be able to implement using existing resources and capital. And again, this is a mindset about being able to implement immediately. This is not your long-term vision, the bigger thing, but it's about taking you to the next level. What can I do with what I already have? What can I do with what I have in hand? You also want to be able to deliver with excellence and quality with your available capacity. You want to be able to implement within 3 to 6 months. And it's easy to implement. That doesn't mean you don't have obstacles or challenges, but it means that the process of implementing is simple. It doesn't get too complex. And you want something that's going to take your business to the next level. For example, you may decide that you have a good market locally, but you may decide that my next level is to provide the same service in another major metro city. Also, you want something that is going to help you generate positive cash flow within 3 to 6 months of implementation. Now, once you do this, you then put together what we call a business opportunity prioritization matrix. On the left-hand side, you'll see a list of opportunities, opportunities 1 through 4. And then you have, in this case, you will have more than 3 criteria, but just to illustrate the matrix, I've listed 3. So I have criteria 1, criteria 2, criteria 3, and I've listed value, delivery excellence, and ability to start in 3 to 6 months. Now, when we look at this, we notice that opportunity 2 has the highest total. It has 11, compared to opportunity 1 that has 10, or opportunity 3 which has 8, or opportunity 4 which has 7. You use a scale of 1 to 5 to score each of the criteria, with 5 being the highest. And again, we've totaled it, and in this case we found that opportunity we might consider to be our best opportunity. Now, in this process of taking the idea to implementation, it's good to get feedback from other small business people or other experts. But remember, it's still your destiny. So therefore, it's your decision. And that's the attitude that you need to take. It's not that you don't want to take in advice, but remember, the ultimate responsibility for your success is yours. It's not mine. It's not your advisor. It is you. It is the decisions you make that make you or break you. Now, we've talked about unique competitive space. We've talked about business opportunity identification and prioritization. Now we're going to talk about how to develop a positive cash flow business model. Now, first of all, we need to understand what a business model is. It simply is answering the question, how do you logically create that value? Now, it's defined as the value creation we talked about. Remember, we talked about value creation. When you create enough value, then you have something where people want to exchange value. That means they want to, for example, exchange money for what you provide. So therefore, it defines the value creation priorities of an actor, which is you or your business, in respect to the utilization of both internal and external resources. So what it's saying is you're deciding on an opportunity, and you're going to apply the resources that you have in order to make that a profitable business. It also defines how you relate to others, stakeholders, such as actual and potential customers, employees, unions, suppliers, competitors, and other internal groups. It takes account of situations where the actor's activities may A. affect the business environment and its own business in ways that create conflicting interests or impose risks on the actor. So again, that's why we need to look at our environment. We need to do a steeple, which is essentially an environmental analysis, looking at what's going on around us. We also need to do a SWOT analysis to understand our strengths, our weaknesses, and the opportunities and threats. Because all of this goes into developing a logical business model that creates value. And finally, B, develop new, previously unpredicted ways of creating value. Now, for some of you, we'll make that a little bit simpler. When we look at the business model, where does it fit? It actually straddles between strategy and operations. Strategy is where you have defined your purpose and determined how you're going to achieve that purpose in your business. For example, in my business, it's all about making the invisible visible, the impossible possible, the unimaginable imaginable. And simply all I'm saying is that I look at how to take a business idea and make it and implement it to make it tangible. So therefore, within that theme, that purpose, I have different strategies. One of those things is helping people to understand how to develop concepts into concrete operations. Now, the business model straddles the line of operations. The strategy provides us the focus. Operations is how we actually achieve it. The business model combines the strategy with the high level of operations. It says how we're going to accomplish it. When we get down to business process model and organization model, Those are pieces that support the business model in order to make it work. Now, central question for a business model. When we talk about developing it, this is what we're trying to achieve. How do we fulfill our purpose to serve our clients in a sustainable way while making a profit and sharing the benefits with our stakeholders? Again, I'll repeat that. How do we fulfill our purpose to serve our clients in a sustainable way while making a profit and sharing the benefits with our stakeholders? When we think of the elements of that question, one of the things that you need to understand is, what is sustainability? Sustainability means that your business will continue to exist, okay? And some of the characteristics of sustainable businesses are those that are growing, that are multiplying, that are adapting, that are evolving. That means that they are working within their business environment that's constantly changing, and they're adapting and adjusting so that they always can continue to be successful. We also need to think about what is profit when we think about that question, that central question, because it says, how can we serve our clients in a sustainable way while making profit and sharing the benefits with our stakeholders? Profit is simply a gain or positive increase. Now, if you remember back when I talked about unique competitive space, I mentioned capital as a strength. So essentially, profit is the excess. That means that whatever you input, you get more of it coming out. So for example, you may have put in certain things to start the business, but you find that you not only profit financially, but you can profit socially. It expands your ecosystem, which helps your business into the future. It also increases your spiritual strength. It increases your resources because now you have more people working for you, maybe. You may have more equipment. It also increases your intellectual aspect. You know more now. So in the future, you can apply that new knowledge to new situations to create more wealth. Politically, you have standing because you have done certain things successfully in business. And then the physical. Of course, if you're doing right, you should be living a life that promotes health and fitness as well. Now, another aspect to that central question is stakeholders. So what do we mean by that? Stakeholders are... So who are stakeholders? First of all, they're stakeholders in your business, in your corporate structure. That is yourself, other owners, partners, board of directors, your employees, contractors. Then you have a layer of collaborators, those that are helping you do your business in serving your clients. For example, that can be people who are supplying you raw parts for something that you're assembling. Channels are those, essentially they're distribution channels. That means that those are the channels through which you are able to deliver your product or service to your customers. And then of course you have your customers, and then you have the community at large, which might be society. It might be your local neighborhood, it could be your city, could be your, the state, your country, that is actually your community. It all depends on what you do and the environment in which you work in. So they're important because they also receive benefit, or should receive benefit, from your business enterprise. So when we think about developing this business model, there are actually 4 areas that we look at. One is the customer, process, the network and channels, and your financials. And there are questions that we answer in every single one of these areas. So when you're developing that business model, you should be able to answer each of these questions. As it relates to your customer, who are your customers? What do they look like? Are they young? Are they old? Are they men? Are they women? Do they live in the United States? Do they live in Africa? Do they live in a French-speaking country, an English-speaking country? How much money do they have to spend, or additional money do they have to spend above their normal expenses? Okay, those are questions. Those are the demographics of your customers. Also, What do we offer each of our customer segments? For example, your products and services might service youth, but it might also service women. So for each one, you have to decide, based on their characteristics, what products and services you'll offer them. How do we relate to our customers over time? That means that how are we trying to position ourselves with them? Are we trying to position ourselves with excellent customer service? We provide excellent communication. We tell them about what's going on, and this is the thing that really all companies should do. Are we following up with them? Do we resolve their problems quickly? Do we communicate them, for example, only via the internet? Do we do it face-to-face? Do we do a lot before they buy the product? For example, a house. There's a big process. People go look at houses. They think about it. There's a lot of back and forth, before a person buys a product. That's much different than when a person buys a gallon of milk. Also now the process. What are the key activities that are involved in running the business? And that doesn't mean things like human resources or accounting, but it means in the business process in order to deliver to that client. For example, if you are delivering pizza, the key activities, one is you have to have the raw material. You then have to have the equipment and facilities to deliver it. You need the personnel who take the orders, then make the pizza, then package it, then deliver to the customer, then receive the money from the customer, and then deposit that money in the bank. You also, as a part of that process, you need to understand who will be the people groups responsible for the key activities involved in running the business. Now, we've identified the different steps, like in pizza delivery. You have the raw materials, you have the making of taking the order, making the pizza, packaging it, and delivering it. That involves people. So in a pizza store, you might have a receptionist who answers and takes the order. You'll have people who make the pizza and package it, and then you might have someone different who actually delivers it. Then what are the outputs from the key activities involved in running the business? The outputs again are pizza. In this particular case, what resources do we use to run the business? Again, in this example, we can say that one of the things that's required is a pizza oven. We need a place where we can shape the pizza bread. Raw materials that we need include dough, or rather flour, milk, anything that it takes to make the dough. We need things for the topping, so it might be vegetables, meat, tomato sauce, cheese. Those are resources that we need. Now, when we think about the network and channel element, these are the things that allow us to supply our business and also distribute what we produce to our clients. So in essence, with whom do we partner, align, and or collaborate? Some restaurants who make pizza, for example, they may actually have a separate company who serves as delivery service. In fact, some people have made the delivery service a business where they actually provide delivery service for many restaurants. Also, what and who do we use to reach our customers? And again, those are our channels. That's our distribution, but it could also be people that we use to make people aware of our products. So it could be media, could be publicity, a lot of different things. And finally, what are the key costs? Fixed, variable, direct, and indirect of running the business. Fixed are things that happen all the time. For example, salaries. You have to pay your people a certain amount every month. Variable might be seasonal expenses, like if you're in the lawn care service. Because you don't do much business in the winter, you may not need to buy fertilizer, gas for the mowers, those types of things. Those are variable based on the amount of work that you are doing. Direct and indirect. Also, how do we generate revenue? How do we charge them? Now, for example, pizza, it's very simple. We produce it, you pay us cash, and we have that pizza. But maybe, for example, now we have that delivery service that's a part of the pizza chain. It's not the actual pizza company, but the delivery service, they actually charge a fee for delivery. Okay, so that's also another way of generating revenue. Not just in making the pizza, because some people may choose to come into the stores. So charging them more for delivery actually might be another stream of revenue. But often in actuality, companies tend to just cover the expenses of delivery for their customers by charging them. Now, after we have looked at all those elements and we've answered those questions, we want to think about the process. Now, let me just reflect. The 4 key areas was customer, process, network and channel, and financials. Now we want to pull those all together into our model. So this is just a simple process for drafting something that you can work with. First of all, you look at those questions and you answer them and you write down what you know. You then need to research to improve and fill your gaps in the business model. And then you want to generate your first business model draft. Now again, this doesn't have to be an essay. It can just be points, a list of bullet points that say, for example, if your question is who are your customers, you list my customers live in Johannesburg, Africa, or Lagos, Nigeria. They are between the age of 18 and 30. You do not need to write a document. You just need to express the information. Now, once you've developed this draft, then you want to pass around to people in your circle to get feedback. Now, this process actually generally goes on. You'll have several different rounds, and so you want to review and update several times. But the key is to put a time limit. For example, if you have a goal of implementing this within 3 months or within 1 month, you can't wait all of that time to develop the business model. So you might have to say, I need to get input and have something that I can work with in 2 weeks. And at that 2-week point, if you don't have to evaluate it, you have to then evaluate, well, do I want to continue down this course? Do I want to do more research? What do I need to do to make sure that I stay on my schedule? Or you may even ask yourself, is it possible for me to implement in 3 months? Maybe in reality, I need to look at 6 months. But the point is to continue to move forward. Don't get stuck in just writing a document. The document is not important. It's what you have developed that you've put in that document that's important. So then in step 6, you want to finalize your first business model. And again, it should be in a way, it'll be 2 or 3 pages, and it still might be bullet points. But essentially, you will be able to communicate clearly in speech or in writing what your business is, what value it brings, and how you are logically going to be able to deliver that value to your market. Now, once you have that business model, then you want to think of how can I implement this immediately? And it's also implementable if possible. Okay, and in some cases, some businesses, you really have to spend more work before you can develop an implementation plan. But again, our goal is to see you get started in business and moving, because you'll learn as you go. The goal is to develop something that is a sustainable representation of your larger idea. Now, the aim of implementation in our approach, you want to take your business to a new level. You want to develop a transformative path leading to new success. You want to build value to draw paying clients, thereby producing steady and increasing cash flow. Now, if you remember, we talked about developing a positive cash flow business model. So again, what we're emphasizing is when you are answering those questions, when you are developing your business model, you really want to think about gaining clients, not thinking about how you finance it first, how you can develop cash flow, develop business coming in. And then the second step is to say, okay, now what do I need to do to achieve that cash flow? What do I need to input into it? Whether it's resources, it's personnel, it's capital. And then you may find that there's a gap where you need to apply for loans or whatever else. But you still want to keep those to a minimum, because remember, your business evolves. And so therefore, you don't want to take a lot of debt on at the very beginning unless you have to. Now, for example, maybe for someone who has a trucking contract for a year or 2 or 3 years and they don't have a truck. If they can get a loan to purchase or lease a truck, that's an expense that they've taken on, and it can be quite expensive, but they have a guaranteed contract. So that might be a situation where you decide that because every month I'm making 2 or 3 times more than my debt, I'm going to go ahead and take that chance. Okay? So there are situations where you make decisions that involve debt, but you look at it from the perspective of, if I do this, what am I really getting out of it? You just don't want to assume that you need to get a loan or that you need to get money, where you're borrowing it in order to do your business. Now, the components of an implementation plan include a high-level strategy, and understand that that is input, and that comes with doing your unique competitive space. And we're really not going to cover that in depth in this process. That's actually another workshop series. But your implementation plan, based on what we talked about in unique competitive space and what we'll talk about in those workshops, you won't have developed a full high-level strategy, but you will have the components as inputs for your implementation plan in this workshop. So first, you have goals, which are really just a broad stroke saying that this is what I plan to achieve in this year. The other thing that when we're talking about implementing a business, getting yourself going, I really consider making plans for a new business or new venture or new product line in terms of 6 months or a year. And my goals and all of my implementation plan reflect that. So for example, my goals might be for this year to start the business, to make so much cash flow, to develop my business infrastructure, like having an office, phone, those types of things, and to have, do a certain amount of community work, whatever it is as far as a business. Those are your goals, and you will reach those over a year. Now, your objectives are smaller increments of that. So for example, if you say that I'm going to set up the business structure, one of your first objectives might be to set up an office. Another objective under setting up the infrastructure might be setting up the field office or setting up the sales office. So they actually become measurable things within that year that support your goals. When we think about objectives, we use the term SMART. It's an acronym for specific, measurable, actionable, time-defined, reasonable objectives. So that means when I say start the office, I'm going to phrase it that I am going to, within the first 3 months, I'm going to set up an office so that our customers can receive information and support from our staff. That might be an objective. Your milestone is when you actually get the office, have the phone in place and have a receptionist sitting at the desk. Your activities are the things that it takes in order to achieve your milestones, your objectives, and goals. So for example, an activity will be, okay, I have to rent the office, I have to go out, find an office, rent it, I have to order the phone line, I have to hire a receptionist. Okay, and then your time frames tell you when each of the milestones or activities need to be achieved. So for example, if we say that if we have a 6-month timeline from now going out, we might say that in the first month, I need to find and lease the office. In the second month, I need to hire the receptionist and get the telephone installed. Okay, so those are elements of an implementation plan. And again, this is in our last workshop where we talk about how to develop the implementation plan. So we're not really spending a lot of time on it. Okay, you also have to include people who are responsible for each of those activities, the resources that you need, and you need to think ahead. What might my obstacle be? And also think about ways to overcome those. Now let's just quickly review.
We have finished each of our topics for this particular seminar. We've covered unique competitive space, We've covered business opportunity identification and prioritization, and also we've covered positive cash flow business model and implementation. We now come to the review and feedback portion. First of all, the review process includes a review packet for those of you who are working with facilitator. For those of you who are online, it's something that you can download and work through on your own. If you are at a location with a facilitator, he or she will walk you through the packet and debrief the responses of the group. You need to complete the review packet. If you are local, the facilitator will respond to any questions you have. If you are completing on your own or without a facilitator, post comments in the discussion area or send an email based on instructions in the review packet. Now it's time for you to put me on pause. After you finish this process, I'll join you again. Welcome back. You should have completed your review process. I hope that you are taking in all of the information that we're providing you. Remember, it's for your benefit so that you can get your business started off right and get it started off quickly. Now remember, it's very important for you to close any issues or questions that you may have. So make sure that you make contact with your local facilitator to do this. If you are doing this on your own, remember to send us questions or issues that you may have, and we will try to help you close those. Now let's take a look at what our next steps are. Remember that this workshop or this seminar is actually a part of a 5-session series, and there are 4 follow-up workshops, each 4 hours, which actually goes through in detail the information that we presented to you today. The first is the unique competitive space profiling. The next is opportunity identification and prioritization. The third is business model development, and finally, the immediate startup plan development. Now remember, after you've done this, and we're only talking about maybe 4 weeks to 6 weeks, you're ready to get started the same day with your business. Now, let's actually take a look at the steps that are involved. Remember that we're trying to help you over a period of time so that you're successful. So our program, which is called the CD program, actually is at minimum a 6-month process in which we continue to work with you as you develop your business and as you implement. So the first thing that we do is we start the countdown for implementing a business opportunity within 6 months after the first workshop. Remember, the first workshop is the unique competitive space assessment. 2, we complete each one of these workshops a week over the next month. And again, it may extend to maybe about 6 weeks, just depending on the schedule of the group. For each of the workshops, you're going to turn in completed tasks for each one that are going to be reviewed. We call those deliverables. You're also going to participate in weekly or regular feedback conferences for the workshops. This will generally be after you've submitted your work and your facilitator and others have had a chance to look over your work. We're also going to set up a schedule for regular feedback for the 6-month period. Now, even though we have 4 workshops listed out, every week there is coaching and learning and training over the 6 months to make sure that you're prepared to implement all of the pieces of business. Now remember, I mentioned that there are deliverables for each workshop that need to be done, reviewed, and feedback provided to you. So if you are continuing with us throughout this period of 6 months, or even taking any of the workshops, you have your first deliverable that you need to get together. Now this deliverable will be both for the unique competitive space profiling and business opportunity identification and prioritization workshops. You are first of all to walk through and write down results from doing a unique competitive space assessment. This is not expected to be formal, but informal. We are not expecting you to be experts. You will find that there are probably gaps or a lot of gaps in your knowledge. But it's more about putting down what you know more than trying to figure out what you don't know or trying to fill those gaps at this time. We want you to get a feel for the process. So this unique competitive assessment again includes identifying your passions. What would you do for the rest of your life all the time, even if you didn't make money at it? What are your skills? What are your experience, your natural abilities, your personality? Some of you may actually have some of this information already together because you've done personality assessments online or part of work, or even your CV or resume, your curriculum vitae. Those things actually help you with this process. The next is you want to identify your capital or strengths. Now, obviously, your first strengths or set of strengths you identify with doing the first step. But here we're also talking about things, how much money do you have to invest in a business? What are the social connections that you have that are going to help you with your business? Do you belong to a group who needs your type of service? That might be the best place to start your business. Not trying to advertise in general, around your community, but working with groups that know you and trust you first. Then you need to do the steeple analysis, which is essentially looking at your environment. Remember, some of those pieces are social and cultural, technological innovation, economic, ethical, political, legal, and environmental. And then finally, you're pulling all those pieces together to look at your profile and say, where am I strong? Where am I weak? Where are my opportunities? Where are my threats? Now, in actuality, you're going to do the SWOT analysis, but at this point, probably where you're going to only have your information is going to be in the strengths and weaknesses. When you do the business opportunity part, you'll be able to talk about the opportunities and threats to doing your type of business. The next part of your deliverable is to walk through and write down results from a business opportunity analysis. And that has two parts. That's identifying opportunities. And remember, when we talked about that, we're focusing on taking advantage of the market. There were actually a lot of different areas that we mentioned that you could look at, think about, and figure out where there might be business opportunities. And second is prioritizing those. Identifying those that are going to work for you. And in this, we gave you a list of probably 8 or 9 criteria in which to prioritize. And you want to use that list. As you get more experience, you will then adapt that list to your own needs. But for the purpose of your deliverable, again, you want to identify things that you already know. Now, you may want to do a little bit of research online in your local, walk around, observe, go to a marketplace and see what people are offering. It's okay. You can do that because that will be a part of your eventual process anyways. So once you have those two pieces, the unique competitive space assessment and your business opportunity analysis, remember again, it's informal, meaning that we want you only to write down what you know already. Expect there to be gaps. But this will actually increase your ability to learn and process what we share with you in each of the workshops. Now, once you've done those two pieces, you're going to come away with 2 or 3 business opportunities you would pursue based on your understanding of your unique competitive space at this moment, as well as the prioritization criteria for business opportunities mentioned in this seminar. Now, seems like a lot. You can actually pause at this point and just go through this section, which was the next steps, just to see if you're clear. Okay, you can take a moment to do that to make sure that everything is there. Then you can start up again and we can look at those questions. Again, if you're working with a group, have your facilitator send a list of group questions that he or she cannot answer. The facilitator will have the correct contact information. And for those of you who are working it on your own, you will be assigned a facilitator if you're part of one of our online groups. You can also schedule a feedback conference with us. Now, I hope that you've gained a lot of insight, and even now you're excited and you're ready to go. And you may even find that when you do your assignment, your deliverable for the next workshop, that you actually have something that you never thought about and that you're ready to go tomorrow. If that's the case, go ahead. We don't want you to stop. We want you to move. We don't want you to lose momentum. So if you come up with something that you think is going to work, start thinking about, start researching, start looking at how you can get started. We don't want to slow you down. We want to help you succeed. So in the end, I want to thank you for being a part of this seminar. Remember, keep moving forward. Don't stop. Keep pushing until you succeed.